Elara Wen woke to a notification hovering in the air like a bruise. Imprint meter, 82% matching target profile. When imprint meter reaches 100%, your verified identity will be reassigned. She blinked hard, expecting the text to shatter like a dream, but it stayed, pinned to her vision as if the world had suddenly decided she was an interface. Her dorm room at Redbridge University smelled of detergent and last night noodles. The ceiling fan wobbled. Her phone lay face down beside a brass library card stamped with a phoenix. She was not the kind of person who hallucinated percentages. She was, however, the kind of person whose life had been curated by other people's assumptions. That her scholarship was a charity case. That her quietness was weakness. That her last name, Wen, meant she would be grateful for scraps. She flipped her phone and saw the culprit. An app she did not remember installing. Mirrory. The icon was a pale square, almost blank. The way a predator might try to look like a wall. The app opened without a password. A minimalist dashboard showed her name, her student ID photo, her banking token, and a single pulsing bar labeled imprint meter. Under it, a warning written in polite corporate language. To optimize campus harmony, identity conflicts will be resolved by the strongest pattern match. Elara's stomach went cold. She scrolled. There were terms of service, a dispute button that looped back to the same page, and a line that made her fingers numb. Liability, migration, outstanding debts, disciplinary actions, and reputational flags may follow the reassigned profile. It was absurd. It was also the kind of absurd that becomes real the moment someone with authority decides it is convenient. Elara sat up, feeling the slick panic of being watched. Across the room, Mina Lin, the roommate assigned to her by housing, was already awake, brushing her hair with slow, careful strokes, as if she were practicing being someone else. Mina's hair had been straight yesterday. Now it curled in the same loose pattern Elara had worn last week when she attended a debate reception. Mina glanced up and smiled like a mirror learning to lie. At first, Elara had thought Mina was simply lonely. Mina followed her to the dining hall, asked what she ordered, laughed a beat late at her jokes, copied her posture in study lounges. People called it admiration. Elara tried to be kind, but then Mina began collecting Elara's small signatures, her phrases, her hand gestures, the way she tucked hair behind her ear when thinking, and the copying stopped being clumsy. It became precise. Worse, it became public. A campus influencer account posted a split-screen video. Elara walking into the library in a charcoal coat, Mina walking in 10 minutes later in the same coat and the same angled smile. The caption read, "Who wore it better?" The comments were cruel in a way that pretended to be playful. Elara didn't care about being compared. She cared about the percentage that had moved from 82 to 84 after the video went viral. When she confronted Mina, Mina tilted her head and said, "You don't own a vibe, Elara. Besides, the campus likes consistency." The words sounded rehearsed, as if Mina had learned them from a script. Elara noticed something in Mina's ear. A voice modulation earbud with a blinking blue LED. A voice modulation earbud. A tool to borrow not just style, but sound. Elara ran to the only person on campus who treated systems like puzzles instead of fate, Juno Park. Juno lived on caffeine and righteous annoyance and could turn a rumor into a spreadsheet before breakfast. In the student union, Juno listened without interrupting, then pulled out a laptop covered in stickers and said, "Okay, either you're stressed and this is a weird AR prank, or somebody is running an identity cloning experiment on the student body." Elara placed her phone on the table. Juno's gaze sharpened. "Mirrory," she read. "I've heard whispers. It's used by sororities to coordinate aesthetics. But this," she pointed at the liability clause, "this is not fashion. This is theft with better branding." Juno traced the UI with a fingertip like a detective reading footprints. "The app is tied into campus authentication. See that token? That's your access to everything. Cafeteria, dorm, grades, stipends. If someone wins the match, they inherit your keys, and you inherit their mess." Elara felt her throat tighten. Mina's mess. The sudden urgency in Mina's copying. The way Mina's eyes sometimes flicked toward Elara's phone as if waiting for instructions. They tested the theory. Juno asked Elara to act out of character in public, loudly and unambiguously, like a person breaking a spell. At noon in the quad, Elara climbed a bench and began reading a passage from a finance textbook in a theatrical voice, gesturing wildly. Students stared. Someone filmed. Elara's heart pounded. That night, Mina returned to the dorm with the same passage on her lips, repeating Alara's dramatic cadence to a mirror, practicing the arm sweep. The imprint meter ticked up to 86. It's adaptive, Juno muttered. It watches what gets attention and encourages Mina to reproduce it, like training data. Alara understood then. The app wasn't simply scoring similarity, it was steering Mina, rewarding her whenever she became more legible as Alara. And if it could steer Mina, it could steer anyone. A campus built on committees and recommendations and silent reputations was the perfect petri dish for identity capture. Alara's scholarship depended on donor confidence. Her future depended on being trusted. If the app reassigned her profile, she would become the person the system labeled her as a problem. Alara's first instinct was to fight Mina, directly expose her, humiliate her, force the copying to stop. But she remembered the warning hovering in her vision. Stronger match wins. The system wanted a public contest, a spectacle where Mina could harvest attention as fuel. Alara did not want to win by being louder. She wanted to win by changing the rules. She needed evidence, not applause. That was when she went to Dr. Halden Reyes, the faculty advisor who ran the university's ethics lab and disliked donors in the same way some people disliked mold, quietly, permanently. Dr. Reyes listened in his office, crowded with papers and dismantled electronics. When Alara showed him the app, he exhaled as if he had been waiting for someone to say the name. Mirrory is an offshoot of an alumni startup, he said. They pitched it as anti-bullying if someone is being imitated. The system would flag harassment. But the funding came from unusual places. He opened a receipt folder labeled Sponsors. Inside were printed emails, donors asking about behavioral alignment and brand continuity. Alara's stomach turned. Dr. Reyes tapped one line. They want a campus full of predictable elites. If they can rewrite who counts as elite, they can manufacture loyalty. That night, Alara watched Mina sleep, listening to the faint click of Mina's earbud charging. Alara did not hate Mina the way a storybook heroine might hate a villain. Mina was not a monster. Mina was a person trying to escape poverty by wearing someone else's certainty, like a coat. But empathy did not mean surrender. Alara opened Mirrory again and noticed a subtle detail. The imprint meter bar had a history icon. She clicked. A graph appeared, spikes correlated with specific events. Alara's scholarship announcement, her internship offer, her acceptance into a selective seminar. Mina's copying intensified whenever Alara gained official recognition. The app didn't just reward similarity, it rewarded proximity to power. Alara realized she could bait the system not by changing her hair, but by changing what recognition meant. If she could create a public proof that Mina could never replicate because it depended on private truth, then the match would fail. She needed something like a cryptographic signature of self. Juno suggested a trap that sounded ridiculous, and therefore, on campus, might work. We build a fake milestone, she said. A prestigious invite that looks real to the system. Something the sponsors monitor. Mina will rush to copy it, and will attach a payload proof of fraud, proof of manipulation. Dr. Reyes added, the best bait is a stage. They always come to stages. The university's 70th anniversary gala was a week away, a donor-heavy event where student representatives gave speeches. Alara had been asked to speak, partly because she was articulate, partly because donors loved the narrative of a scholarship student who looked grateful without being messy. Mina somehow learned about the speech before Alara told anyone. Mina began practicing Alara's cadence at night, the earbud blinking. The imprint meter climbed to 93. Alara's vision felt like it had an expiration date. 2 days before the gala, Alara printed a set of documents on campus letterhead and sealed them in wax like a gala invitation sealed in wax. The documents announced a new ambassador of legacy scholarship and invented honor with invented responsibilities. The letter invited the recipient to present a brief statement at the gala, after Alara's speech. It looked plausible because it was built from the university's actual bureaucracy. The right fonts, the right signatures copied from public PDFs, the right tone of ceremonial emptiness. But the invitation contained hidden marks, tiny tracking dots on the paper like a loan contract printout with hidden tracking dots and a QR code embedded in the wax seal that, when scanned, would log the device ID and the authentication token of whoever opened it. Dr. Reyes installed the logger on a secure server. Juno delivered the invitation the way gossip is delivered, accidentally, in a place where it could be overheard. She left it on a table in the dorm lounge beside Alara's bag, then walked away. Mina's eyes followed it like a hungry animal. That night, the server pinged. Someone scanned the seal. Mina's device, Mina's token, and behind it, a second token, an administrator credential tunneling through a proxy. Someone else was feeding Mina the script. The name attached to that administrator credential was a shock. Galen Song. Ilara's childhood family friend. Her unofficial fiancé in the way families sometimes cling to old promises like heirlooms. Galen attended a different school now, but he was in Havenport for the gala as an alumnus in training, wearing success like cologne. Ilara remembered him as gentle, a boy who used to carry her books when her arms were small. In recent years he had become distant, his messages sparse, his compliments edged with irritation, as if Ilara's achievements inconvenienced him. Doctor, Reyes showed Ilara the trace. Galen's alumni login had been used to push an update into Mirari's campus connector. Juno swore under her breath. So it's not just Mina copying you, she said. It's someone powerful shaping the copying. Ilara's chest tightened, but her mind sharpened. If Galen was involved, this was not a petty dorm rivalry. This was a pipeline from donor control to identity reassignment. Ilara's scholarship was not a gift. It was a leash. And Galen, who had always resented being compared to her, had found a way to win without becoming better, by replacing her. On gala night, the auditorium glowed with chandeliers and curated generosity. Students wore rented gowns. Donors wore certainty. Ilara arrived in a simple dress and the burnt rose ribbon, a satin hair ribbon, the color of burnt rose in her hair, not to be pretty, but to be consistent for the cameras. Mina arrived in the same dress and the same ribbon, her smile practiced. The imprint meter hovered at 97. Ilara's vision felt thin, as if the world could peel away. Backstage, the host read names. Mina stood in line as if she belonged there. Galen sat in the front row, leaning toward a donor, nodding with the familiarity of someone who believed the room owed him. When Ilara's name was announced, she walked on stage calmly. She began her speech about education and opportunity, the kind of speech that makes donors feel wise. Halfway through, she changed it. She spoke about identity not as branding, but as responsibility. She spoke about how easy it is to confuse a person with their accessories, their tone, their curated gratitude. She spoke about how systems can be designed to reward imitation and punish authenticity. Donors shifted in their seats. The host's smile stiffened. Mina's eyes narrowed. Ilara ended with a sentence Dr. Reyes had insisted on. If you can replace a person by copying her surface, then you never believed in her depth. The audience clapped politely, confused. Then the host announced the new honor, the invented one. Ambassador of Legacy Scholarship. Mina stood immediately and walked on stage before the host finished the sentence. She took the microphone with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed being chosen. The room murmured. Mina said, "Hello everyone, I am Ilara Wen." The lie hit the air like smoke. Ilara did not interrupt. She watched Mina open her phone, ready to read the stolen speech, and saw Mina's face blanch as the note file transformed into something else. A scrolling list of loan applications, vendor chats about counterfeit designer labels, and authentication logs from Mirari. The screen behind them, connected to the podium feed, lit up with the same information. The tracking dots had worked. The QR code had worked. The server had pushed the payload onto the live display. The gala became very quiet in the way that precedes consequences. Mina tried to swipe the screen away, but each swipe revealed more. The administrator proxy, the update hashes, the signature of Galen's login. The donors leaned forward now, not with admiration but with alarm. A security manager stepped toward the stage. Mina's hands shook. Galen stood up too fast, knocking his chair back, his face draining of color. He shouted Ilara's name as if the problem was that she existed loudly. Ilara stepped to the microphone and said, in a voice steady enough to be a weapon, "Before anyone blames a student for a system built by adults, please note that the app's campus connector was updated using an alumni administrator account at 6:12 p.m. yesterday. The account belongs to Galen Song." The room turned its gaze to him like a spotlight. Galen's mouth opened, closed. Donors dislike being embarrassed, but they despise being implicated. The kindest thing the room could do was become cold, and it did. Chaos unfolded in layers. University lawyers rushed. Dr. Reyes stepped into the aisle with printed packets of evidence, because nothing frightens administrators like paper, handing them to the provost, to the gala chair, to the head of IT. Juno filmed everything from the side, capturing faces and timestamps. Mina began to cry, pleading that she was manipulated, that she was desperate, that she thought she was earning her place. Alara believed her. Desperation is not innocence, but it is context. Alara addressed Mina without cruelty. "You could have asked for help," she said. "You could have built your own life." Mina sobbed harder. The imprint meter hovering in Alara's vision flickered wildly, dropping from 97 to 54 as the public record shattered the illusion of similarity. The app thrummed like an angry insect. It wanted a winner, but the system cannot assign what the crowd no longer believes. Authenticity is not purity. It is continuity. And Mina's continuity had just been severed by truth. Galen tried to pull Mina off stage like rescuing a prop. Security blocked him. The provost's expression turned to that special kind of rage reserved for someone who has just realized a donor scandal might cost him his job. "Mr. Song," the provost said, voice tight. "Please come with us." Galen stammered about misunderstandings and love and tradition, about how Alara was too proud and needed grounding, words that revealed more than any confession. Alara watched him with a strange calm. She had spent years assuming his distance was simple disinterest. Now she saw it. He had wanted her close only if she stayed smaller than him. Her success had humiliated him. And rather than grow, he had sought to erase. That is what weak pride does when given technology. It turns into sabotage. After the gala, the university attempted damage control. Press releases were drafted. The app was temporarily disabled. Donors were asked to remain confident. But evidence had already escaped into the wild. Juno posted a thread that explained the app's mechanics in plain language. Students recognized themselves in at times they had felt pressured to perform, to copy, to become more acceptable. Within hours, dozens reported similar experiences. Mimicry in clubs, identity confusion in grading portals, strange authentication prompts. Dr. Reyes filed a formal complaint to the State Education Board. A journalist called. An investigation opened. Alara's scholarship was suspended for 3 days pending review. The petty reflex of bureaucracy, then reinstated with public apology when the board threatened sanctions. Alara did not celebrate. She understood that systems are not defeated by one exposure. They are defeated by sustained refusal. So she and Juno organized a campus identity integrity clinic, where students could check their authentication tokens, audit apps, and learn how to document coercion. They turned survival into infrastructure. Mina was not arrested that night. She was escorted to a small office, given water, and told she would face disciplinary review. Alara asked to speak with her privately. In the office, Mina's makeup had streaked. Her borrowed confidence had collapsed into a frightened 20-year-old who looked like she had been running for years. "I didn't want to hurt you," Mina whispered. "I wanted to stop being invisible." Alara sat across from her. "Invisibility is a problem," she said. "But stealing someone's light doesn't make you seen. It makes you a shadow with a debt." Mina flinched. Alara slid a printed page across the desk. A list of resources. Financial counseling, emergency grants, legal aid. "Take this," Alara said. "Use it to build something that is yours. And delete the earbud. The people behind the app don't care about you. They care about what you can carry for them." Mina stared at the list as if it were a foreign language. Then, slowly, she nodded. Alara did not forgive her on the spot. Forgiveness is not a trophy, but she offered Mina a door that did not require becoming someone else. That was the difference between Alara and the donors. Alara believed people could change if given tools instead of traps. Galen's fall was uglier. His family called Alara's parents, pleading for quiet. His father hinted at lawsuits. His mother cried about reputations. Alara's parents, who had once treated Galen like family, responded with a single sentence. "We will not pay to be betrayed." Alara met Galen one last time in a university conference room where a mediator sat like a board judge. Galen tried to apologize, but his apology was a negotiation. He said he had done it because he loved her, because she was changing, because she made him feel small. Alara listened, then said, "Your feelings are not an excuse to rewrite my life." She placed a cracked mirror compact that never reflects the same face twice on the table. A cracked mirror compact she had found in Mina's drawer. The one that never reflected the same face twice. "This belongs to the system you helped build," she said. "It teaches people that identity is a costume. I'm done being your costume." Galen's expression twisted into anger, then panic as the mediator slid a document forward. A restraining order request, an evidence list, a notice that the Alumni Foundation had terminated his access. Consequences are not dramatic. They are administrative. And for people like Galen, that is the real terror, losing the doors they thought were guaranteed. The mirrory icon vanished from Alara's phone one morning, as if it had never existed. The hovering percentage in her vision faded, leaving behind ordinary air. But Alara kept one reminder, a pendant with a microchip inside the gemstone. A pendant with a microchip inside, given to her by Dr. Reyes. Not to protect you, he said, but to remind you that protection should be transparent. If you can't audit it, it doesn't deserve your trust. Alara wore it under her shirt. She finished the semester. She took her internship. She spoke at a student assembly about how envy dressed as admiration can become violence when systems reward it. Juno graduated and took a job in cybersecurity, promising to build tools that make consent legible. Mina transferred to a community college in another city, quieter, perhaps finally facing herself without a borrowed script. And Alara, walking into the library with the Phoenix-stamped card in her pocket, felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not triumph, but ownership. Not of a brand, of a life. She whispered to herself, as if sealing a vow. No one gets to match me into disappearance again. Alara began noticing how many campus rituals depended on imitation. The way freshmen learned which laughter was safe. The way internships required a specific accent of confidence. The way donors praised polish as if it were morality. And she started writing down every moment someone tried to sand her into a smoother, more profitable shape. She tested her theory about imitation that afternoon at the career fair. Booths were arranged like miniature kingdoms, consulting firms with glossy banners, biotech startups with neon slogans, donors in tailored suits offering advice that sounded like commands. Alara watched how students adjusted their voices as they crossed carpet squares. Softer at philanthropy, sharper at finance, louder near the influencers live streaming day-in-my-life clips. Nobody called it copying. They called it polish. Mirrory called it optimization. Alara wrote that down and underlined it twice. When theft is institutional, it changes names to survive. Juno met her outside the gym with a laptop tucked under her arm like contraband. Juno was a computer science major who refused to treat technology as neutral. I pulled the app's certificate chain, she said, breathless. And it's tied to a campus vendor I've never heard of. Alara showed her the imprint meter. Juno's eyes narrowed. That's not a prank, she said. That's a mechanism. They went to Dr. Reyes, not as a plea for comfort, but as a report of a security threat. Doctor. Reyes listened without interrupting, then pushed her glasses up and said, We treat this like any system that moves power. We map incentives, we map access, and we make the invisible legible. She didn't ask Alara to perform fear. She asked Alara to open Mirrory and narrate every screen. Together they traced the app's logic. It didn't steal faces by magic. It stole them by authority. It only worked because the university had allowed it to touch verification. Mina stayed close in the way parasites do, making herself look like companionship. She brought Alara pastries, offered to help with laundry, laughed too loudly at Alara's small jokes as if laughter could substitute for consent. When Alara didn't reciprocate, Mina's kindness grew serrated. You're acting like I'm contagious, Mina said one night, sitting on Alara's bed without invitation. Alara kept her gaze on the mirror over the desk, watching Mina watch herself. I'm acting like you're dangerous, Alara replied. Mina's smile twitched. You're dramatic, she said, but her fingers tightened around her phone, and the imprint meter ticked up 2 points the moment she left the room. Dr. Reyes requested a meeting with it. The director, Galen Pierce, arrived with a practiced expression of impatience, the face of a man used to being called pragmatic. He insisted Mirrory was an anti-fraud upgrade approved by the donor board, and he implied Alara's concern was stress. Juno asked where the vendor's source code audit was. Galen said there wasn't one. Dr. Reyes asked who signed off on biometric matching as a conflict resolver. Galen said, It's just pattern recognition. Alara heard the word just and felt her skin prickle. Every harm arrives wrapped in just. That week, Alara and Juno built a counter ecosystem. Juno captured network calls, authentication redirects, and device permission changes. Alara captured the human layer, who suddenly misnamed her, who asked whether she was still on scholarship, who offered sympathy that smelled like curiosity. They realized Mina wasn't the only person benefiting from reassignment. Mina was a user. The architecture was the predator. A sponsor event arrived with silver trays and staged applause. The donor, Calder Voss, was introduced as a visionary who believed in identity mobility. He spoke about opportunity like it was a product line. Alara watched Mina drift toward him, careful and eager, like an understudy awaiting a cue. Juno texted from the back of the room. Voss's foundation funded the shell company behind Mirrory. Doctor. Reyes leaned in and whispered, "If you confront him at a microphone, he'll make it interpersonal." Alara didn't give him that gift. She walked to the scholarship students clustered near the wall and asked, quietly, if any of them had received Mirrory notifications. 3 phones appeared. Then another. Their faces carried the same controlled dread. The fear of being called paranoid while reality quietly moved their names around. Alara asked permission to take screenshots. They consented. She asked permission to store the data. They consented again. Consent, she realized, was a way to build a community immune to extraction. The first workshop happened in a library basement, because basements are where truths survive when ballrooms want them decorative. Alara brought printed copies of Miri's terms and a marker. She taught students how to read a contract like an ambush, where liability migrated, where disputes looped back into silence, which clauses gave the vendor permission to redefine identity as strongest match. Juno taught them device hygiene, how to check for unauthorized installs, how to revoke campus single sign-on tokens, how to export logs without altering metadata. Dr. Reyes sat in the back and took notes like a professor learning from her students. By the third workshop, the room was full. Students confessed they had mimicked others out of survival, first-generation kids copying legacy kids' confidence. International students borrowing idioms to avoid mockery, and Alara's message stayed precise. Learning is normal. Theft is not, and the difference is permission. She said it so many times that it became a refrain, but never the same sentence twice, because she refused to let truth become a template someone could laugh off. A campus columnist tried to frame the story as roommate drama. Alara refused the frame. She wrote an op-ed that never mentioned Mina's looks or personality. She described the infrastructure, how an app becomes a gatekeeper when authorities outsource verification to a vendor, how scholarship recipients become the first test group because they have less leverage to refuse. The editor asked her to soften the tone. Alara asked the editor to define which part of coercion deserved softness. The piece ran unsoftened. Mirrory responded the next morning by turning inconvenience into intimidation. Alara's dorm lock rejected her. Her meal plan bounced. Her campus card scanned as review required. The imprint meter jumped to 94%. A pop-up appeared with synthetic cheer. Conflict resolution in progress. Please remain calm. Calm was a request made by people who expected her to disappear quietly. Alara went to the registrar's office and asked for a supervisor. She filmed, with permission, the clerk's screen as it flickered between 2 profiles, Alara Wen, and a second entry with Alara's face but a different social security placeholder. The supervisor tried to take the phone from her. Alara stepped back. "I'm recording for accuracy," she said. "If you want this to stop, fix the problem." Juno found the technical spine of it. Mirrory had embedded itself into Redbridge's authentication relay under the guise of a security patch. It used biometric similarity to overwrite identity tokens, then pushed the changes outward to every campus service that trusted those tokens. The cleverness wasn't in the code. The cleverness was in the permissions. Someone had invited the vendor into the house, and then acted surprised when furniture moved. Dr. Reyes escalated to the faculty senate. Galen Pierce tried to block her. He claimed, "Vendor confidentiality." Dr. Reyes replied that confidentiality doesn't outrank student rights. When Galen threatened to revoke her access to IT resources, she smiled and said, "Go ahead. I'll subpoena you in a week." Galen's expression changed. People who rely on private power flinch when you bring public process into the room. Alara, Juno, and Dr. Reyes met a lawyer who specialized in digital harm and discriminatory systems. The lawyer didn't gasp. She didn't ask for a more dramatic story. She asked whether Alara could prove targeting. Alara showed her the list of affected students, all of them scholarship recipients or international students with limited local support. Juno showed her logs, proving Miri was activated first in scholarship dorm clusters. The lawyer's eyes hardened. "They picked the people least able to fight back," she said, "because they believed you'd be grateful for whatever identity you were assigned." The sentence hit Alara like nausea. Not because it was new, but because it was accurate. The lawsuit started as an injunction request and became a floodlight. Once papers were filed, administrators stopped calling Mirari a tool and started calling it an incident. Voss's foundation released a bland statement about innovation for fairness. Galen Pierce insisted, repeatedly, that there had been no harm because identities were still within the community. Alara listened to him erase individual lives with a phrase and understood why the system had recruited him. He could turn people into categories without blinking. Mina made her move before the injunction could land. She invited Alara to the lighthouse at the edge of campus, an old structure renovated into a donor gallery. "I want to explain," Mina texted, and added a heart emoji like a shield. Alara went anyway, not alone. Juno waited nearby with a recorder. "Doctor." Reyes arranged campus security to be close enough to arrive quickly, but far enough not to spook Mina into silence. Alara walked up the lighthouse stairs and felt the imprint meter throb at 97%, as if the app could smell the confrontation. Mina stood beneath a display of vintage student ID cards, each face frozen behind glass. "You don't understand what it's like," Mina said, fingers brushing one card like a prayer, to be invisible in the right way, to be seen only when you're pretty enough, obedient enough. Alara didn't argue with Mina's pain. Pain is real even when a person uses it as a license. "I understand hunger," Alara said. "I don't accept theft." Mina's eyes flashed. "You were always going to win," she hissed. "You have the tragic scholarship story. People love that." The confession arrived in pieces, as confessions do when someone has rehearsed lies more than truth. Mina admitted Voss had promised her life internships, followers, a family name that opened doors if she became the strong match, and let the system reassign the inconvenient student. "He said it would be seamless," Mina whispered, "like switching labels." Alara's hands curled around her own phone. "I felt it," she said. "Every time a door stopped opening." Mina tried to bargain with intimacy. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, which was not the same as "I chose not to." "He told me you'd be fine," she added, as if Voss's comfort were a moral shield. Alara watched Mina search for a version of herself that was forgivable. "Do you have proof?" Alara asked. Mina's breath hitched. She nodded and pulled up a thread of messages, with a number saved as CV. The instructions were unmistakable. Target selection, timing, pressure points, and a line that made Alara's mouth go dry. "Scholarship profiles accept reassignment faster." Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Not for them specifically, just the city doing what cities do. Mina looked toward the window and suddenly seemed younger, less sure. "If I give this to you," she said, "they'll bury me." Alara held her gaze. "Then make them try," she said. "Your silence is their insurance." Mina's lips trembled. "They won't believe me," she said. Alara answered. "Then we make them read." The injunction arrived 2 days later. A judge ordered Mirari's campus integration halted, authentication keys revoked, affected accounts restored while the case proceeded. Doors began opening again. Meal plans worked. Library access recognized Alara as Alara. The imprint meter froze at 97% and then, as if the app had lost its authority, drained down to 0. Mirari attempted a final trick. An offer of identity stabilization in exchange for signing a waiver. Alara deleted the app and kept the screenshot of the waiver anyway, because she had learned that predators leave fingerprints in their paperwork. Voss attempted narrative salvage. His PR team tried to frame the scandal as a misunderstanding between young women and promised a review of vendor practices. Alara refused the catfight frame publicly. She stood beside Dr. Reyes and a line of scholarship students and described the experiment for what it was. Identity coercion built into campus infrastructure, funded by donors who treated students like test environments. A reporter asked if she hated Mina. Alara said, "I'm not interested in making this about one girl's envy. I'm interested in the architecture that made envy profitable." Mina, under legal advice, handed over her devices and agreed to testify. She did not become a hero. She became a witness. Some students wanted to destroy her. Alara understood the impulse. She also understood that the best punishment for a system is exposure, and exposure requires testimony. Mina transferred out of Redbridge before the semester ended, quieter and smaller, forced to live without the borrowed script that had once protected her from her own emptiness. The university tried to contain damage with committees and memos. Alara attended the hearings anyway. She watched administrators promise safeguards while carefully avoiding the word consent. When she was given a microphone, She used it to say the word repeatedly, because sometimes the simplest word is the sharpest tool. Doctor. Reyes pushed for a new rule. No vendor could touch identity verification without student opt-in and independent auditing. Galen Pierce resigned for personal reasons after his emails were subpoenaed. Those emails showed what Alara had suspected. He had been warned about risks and had chosen convenience. The lawsuits moved like slow storms. Donors threatened to pull funding. Redbridge tried to soothe them with softer language. Alara and Juno refused softness. They offered clarity instead. Timelines, technical diagrams, and a ledger of every student whose services had been denied, while Mirari tried to rewrite them. The case expanded beyond Redbridge, when other campuses admitted they had been pitched the same product. Scholarship students at those schools started sending Alara messages. Screenshots, percentages, fear. Alara responded with a toolkit, not a speech. She and Juno turned their workshop materials into a public guide. How to check your device. How to request records. How to file complaints. How to keep copies. They called it the Unmatched Manual. On a night in late spring, Alara returned to the library alone. She placed the Phoenix stamped card on the table and opened a notebook to the page where she had written about imitation rituals. She added a new line beneath it. If a system demands you be flawless to deserve safety, the system is the problem. Then she wrote another line, smaller. Safety is a practice, not a prize. As finals arrived, students joked about percentages the way people joke about weather, because humor helps the body survive. Alara let the jokes exist but refused to let them become permission to forget. She kept pressing for policy changes, because forgetting is how vendors come back with new logos. When the semester ended, Alara walked across campus and noticed something subtle. Fewer people were performing confidence for donors. More people were asking questions in public meetings. The change was not heroic. It was procedural. It was a community learning how to say no with documentation. Alara did not regain innocence. She gained authorship. She understood now that identity is not a pattern match. It is a living agreement between a person and the world, renewed through choices and protected through consent. If any system tried to reassign her life again, it would find a record waiting, a community trained, and a girl who had learned to turn theft into evidence. Summer didn't give Alara a clean break. Voss's lawyers attempted delay tactics, filing motions designed to exhaust students with paperwork. Redbridge's administration offered Alara a confidential settlement in exchange for silence and a voluntary withdrawal from committee work. The offer was wrapped as generosity, a stipend, a transfer recommendation, a quiet exit. It was another reassignment, this time of her voice. Alara declined in writing and CC'd the student coalition. If they wanted silence, they could watch her refuse it in a document that could be forwarded. Juno, meanwhile, earned a paid internship with a nonprofit that audited surveillance tech. On Juno's first day, she texted Alara a picture of a whiteboard filled with threat models and wrote, "This is just Mirari with better fonts." Alara laughed, then felt the laugh catch in her throat because it was true. Systems repeat themselves. Only the branding changes. Dr. Reyes organized a design sprint with students, faculty, and external auditors to build a consent-first identity stack for campus services. It sounded boring, which was why it mattered. They drafted opt-in flows, created transparent logs students could view, and wrote an appeal process that didn't loop back into itself. Alara watched the architecture form and realized that building safety is less cinematic than surviving danger, but far more powerful. Near the end of July, Mina emailed Alara from a new address. The subject line was plain, "I'm sorry." The message was not long. Mina didn't ask for forgiveness. She wrote that she had started therapy, that she finally understood how she had treated people as consumables, and that she had given the investigators everything she could. She ended with a sentence that didn't excuse her. "I wanted your life because I didn't know how to live mine." Alara didn't reply. Some apologies are for the apologizer. Some are for the record. Alara saved the email anyway, because evidence and closure sometimes share a folder. The first court hearing open to the public drew fewer cameras than Alara expected. Attention moves on, and that is both a mercy and a hazard. In the courtroom, Voss's team tried to argue that identity reassignment was voluntary participation, because students had accepted university terms. Alara listened and felt the old chill of being turned into a checkbox. Her lawyer asked Voss's engineer one question. "Where is the opt-out that doesn't punish the student?" The engineer hesitated Hesitation is a confession in technical rooms. After the hearing, a first-year student approached Alara outside and asked how to stop feeling like she had to imitate everyone to survive. Alara answered, carefully, that imitation can be learning, and learning is human. But the moment someone demands you erase yourself, you are no longer learning, you are being harvested. The student nodded,